I was sitting in the break room last Tuesday, watching my colleague Mark draft a response to a project manager who'd missed a deadline. Mark is usually the most composed guy in the office. Sensible loafers, a quiet voice, the kind of person who brings extra donuts just because. He looked serene, almost peaceful, as his fingers danced across the keyboard. He even had this slight, satisfied smirk, like he was composing a digital thank you note. But then he hit send and turned his screen toward me. He hadn't set a friendly reminder. At the very top, sitting there like a cold clinical indictment, were 4 words, as per my last email. The smirk wasn't born of kindness. It was the expression of a man who had just delivered a surgical strike. By including that one phrase and CCing the department head, Mark wasn't just asking for a status update. He was professionally slapping the recipient in the face, documented and timestamped for everyone to witness. When I asked him if he thought the tone was a bit sharp, he just shrugged, his voice perfectly level. "I'm just being clear," he said. "I'm helping them find the information they clearly missed." He genuinely believed that because he hadn't used a curse word or raised his voice, he was the one holding the moral high ground. He saw himself as a helpful guide, while everyone else in the thread saw a digital executioner. That instantaneous mask, using the language of clarity to deliver a payload of pure condescension, really stayed with me. It made me realize that we've developed a secondary, invisible language. It's a way to be absolutely ruthless while maintaining perfect plausible deniability. We don't scream at each other anymore. We just use interesting, or at least to dismantle someone's confidence while smiling through a zoom lens. It's a highly evolved form of social warfare, where the goal isn't to be right, but to make the other person feel small without ever breaking the rules of politeness. It begs the question, how many times today have you been insulted without even realizing it?
That's such a visceral scene, isn't it? The contrast between the sensible loafers and the absolute surgical precision of that email is what makes it so chilling. We have all seen that smirk. We've all received that email. And I think if we're being completely honest with ourselves, under enough pressure, we've probably all been Mark.
Absolutely. I mean, it feels like the only civilized way to scream sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But when I stepped back from that moment in the break room, it made me realize we can't just brush this off as, simple office pettiness.
No, it's way more than that.
We aren't here today to just complain about annoying coworkers. We need to answer a much, much bigger question. Why do we do this? Why has the modern workplace evolved into this specific arena of passive warfare?
And that is the absolute core mission of this deep dive, because what you described, the timestamped humiliation, the CC field used as a weapon, the perfect plausible deniability, that isn't just someone having a bad day. It isn't a glitch in the corporate system. When you look at the stack of research we've gathered for this, and we've got a lot, from Harvard Business School, the Amsterdam Cooperation Lab, and frankly, a wealth of papers on evolutionary psychology, it becomes clear that this is a highly sophisticated evolutionary mechanism.
It felt sophisticated.
Yeah.
Watching him, it really felt like I was watching a sniper in a cardigan.
That's a fantastic image, and it's shockingly accurate. Today, we are going to investigate the evolutionary and psychological roots of this polite aggression.
Okay.
We tend to think of office politics, as per my last emails, the backhanded compliments, the fake smiles through a Zoom call. It's just modern annoyances, or maybe a symptom of a toxic corporate culture.
Yeah, that's the usual explanation.
But the research suggests these are ancient biological survival strategies. I mean, truly ancient. They've just been adapted for the cubicle.
So Mark isn't just an annoyed project manager in the 21st century. You're saying he's a primate protecting his territory using the tools that are available to him.
In a very, very real sense, yes. The office is a battlefield, but the weapons have changed. We aren't throwing rocks at each other anymore. We're throwing clarifications and gentle reminders.
And we need to understand the mechanics of those weapons.
We do.
Okay, so let's get into the arsenal. We have to start with that classic move, the one Mark used, the "I'm just being clear" defense. I found a story in our stack of sources that mirrors this perfectly, but it actually takes it to a much higher level of stakes.
Oh, I think I know the one you mean. Let's hear it.
I recently came across a thread on a professional forum where a project manager named Liam shared what he called his corporate survival kit. And Liam works in a really high-stakes financial firm in London, a place where, direct shouting matches are considered a career-ending lack of decorum.
Right. Very buttoned up.
He described this situation where a senior partner repeatedly ignored his budget warnings, only to then blame Liam when the numbers didn't align at the end of the quarter.
The classic scapegoat scenario.
But instead of a heated confrontation, which he knew would have cost him his standing in the firm's rigid hierarchy, Liam simply replied to the group email thread with, "As per my last email, the projected deficits were noted on page 4.
The exact same phrase.
The exact same phrase. And by doing this, he wasn't just being petty. He was using what the sources call a low-risk survival strategy. He created this digital shield that protected his job security while avoiding the biological stress of an overt fight. I've been thinking a lot about Liam's story. From my perspective, as someone who looks at workplace culture, it's so easy to label this as toxic, but we have to understand the evolution behind it, right? In a complex social hierarchy, direct aggression is expensive. It risks retaliation and social shaming. By choosing a polite sting, Liam managed to defend his territory without losing his civilized mask. It's a fascinating, if a little cold example of how we've adapted our primal survival instincts to fit into these glass office buildings.
And that's the core of it. The evolutionary origins of passive-aggressive communication in the workplace can be understood as a low-risk survival strategy. It's designed specifically to navigate these complex social hierarchies and resource competition, all while minimizing the high biological and social costs of direct confrontation.
Okay, that phrase, low-risk survival strategy, really stuck out to me in the reading. When we say direct aggression is expensive, help me understand that in, biological terms. Are we talking about energy, calories? What does that mean?
It's a great question. We're talking about risk to life and limb, historically, and just as crucially, the risk to your social standing. Think about our ancestors on the savannah, right? If you enter a direct physical conflict, a fistfight, a brawl over resources, you risk serious injury.
Okay.
If you get injured, you can't hunt, you can't forage, you might actually die. But maybe even more importantly, you risk the loss of your coalitional allies.
Coalitional allies.
Your friends. Your support network, the people who have your back. If you are the aggressor who is constantly screaming, hitting, and causing chaos in the group eventually stabilizes itself by turning on you. You become a liability.
So you get pushed out?
You get pushed out. Retaliation is a massive threat to survival. If the tribe kicks you out, you die. That's the evolutionary memory we're all carrying around.
Right. So in the modern context, if I scream at my boss, or if Liam had screamed at that senior partner in London, he gets fired. That's the modern version of getting kicked out of the tribe and left for the lion.
It is social death. It's career death. So what Liam did with, as per my last email, is he navigated a resource competition. And in this specific case, the resource was his reputation and his professional standing without paying the cost of a fight.
He didn't have to risk social death.
He didn't. He inflicted damage on the senior partner's credibility, but he did it with a shield. He maintained perfect plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability is the shield. I love that.
It's the ultimate shield. Because if the partner got angry and called him on it, what could Liam say? He could just shrug and say, I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just pointing out page 4 to be helpful.
It's the I was just helping defense. It's almost a form of gaslighting, isn't it?
It definitely borders on it. And this lines up perfectly with the data we have from the Amsterdam Cooperation Lab. They did this really fascinating study on punishment in daily life.
Okay.
They wanted to see how people punish norm violations. Things like, free riding on a project, laziness, or someone being immoral. And they found this incredibly distinct split in behavior based entirely on power dynamics.
So who punishes and how do they do it?
Well, the research shows that high-power individuals are much more likely to use direct confrontation.
Because they can afford to, I'm guessing?
That's exactly the logic. If you are the boss or the alpha in the group, the risk of retaliation is much lower because you have the resources to withstand it. You control the payroll. You control the environment. You can afford the expensive strategy of yelling or a direct confrontation because who is going to hit you back?
Not many people, professionally speaking.
Exactly. But the study found that low-power individuals, so people who are subordinates or have less social capital, like Liam in this scenario, they rely almost exclusively on indirect punishment.
And indirect punishment would be gossip, spreading rumors.
Absolutely. Social exclusion, so, not inviting someone to lunch or leaving them off a key email chain, withholding information, and of course, these subtle verbal digs. As per my last email, is a classic textbook form of indirect punishment.
So passive aggression is essentially the weapon of the underdog.
It's the weapon of the vulnerable. It allows them to punish a transgression, like the senior partner ignoring the budget, without exposing themselves to the wrath of someone more powerful. It's a calculated move.
The Amsterdam data suggests we're not just punishing randomly then. We're actually calculating the risk.
We're highly context sensitive. Our brains calculate, usually unconsciously, the risk of retaliation before we choose our weapon. We ask ourselves, what can I get away with here?
That makes Liam's move make so much more sense. He couldn't win a shouting match with the senior partner. He would have been crushed. So he used the only weapon that could get past the partner's defenses without getting him fired.
And it's incredibly effective. The study shows that while direct confrontation is faster at stopping a behavior, if you yell, "Stop it," people generally stop. Indirect punishment can be devastating to a person's reputation over time.
So
It creates a consensus in the group. By pointing out page 4, Liam effectively told the entire email thread, this partner doesn't read, this partner doesn't pay attention. It creates a shared reality that this person is incompetent without a single punch being thrown.
Oh, it's like poisoning the well, but very, very slowly.
Which brings us to another flavor of this, because Liam was defending himself. But sometimes this polite aggression isn't about defense at all. Sometimes it's about proving you're the smartest person in the room. It's offensive, not defensive.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think you have another story that really highlights this specific kind of maneuvering.
I do. This one is about the status play. It's a bit more subtle. So imagine a sleek, glass-walled conference room in a Silicon Valley startup.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
I saw a video essay recently detailing the subtle power dynamics between two engineers. We'll call them Sarah and Chloe.
Wow.
Chloe had just finished presenting a really complex algorithm she developed. The whole room is impressed.
She's having her moment.
She is. But Sarah, sensing a threat to her own status as the smartest in the room, doesn't criticize the work directly. Instead, she leans in with this warm, almost maternal smile and says, "That was great, Chloe. Let me just provide a more helpful re-explanation of the logic for the stakeholders, just so there's no confusion."
Oof, that is brutal.
It's a killer line, right? By re-explaining, Sarah effectively hijacked the intellectual authority of the room. She signaled to the CEO, who was right there, that she was the more cognitively reliable leader. She subtly devalued Chloe's competence under the guise of being supportive.
The guise of being helpful, it's perfect.
Watching this play out, I felt this mix of admiration for the sheer strategic brilliance of the move and just deep empathy for the target. It's a classic case of what the sources call intersexual competition. In professional environments where we all want to be seen as the high-value asset, we use these incredibly sophisticated mechanisms to signal our superiority.
Yes.
Sarah wasn't being mean in the traditional sense. She was maneuvering for favor within the group. It reminds us that even in the most modern industries, we're still navigating these deep-seated drives to protect our rank and our perceived reliability.
Absolutely. From the perspective of intersexual competition and status signaling, behaviors like that helpful re-explanation, or even, as per my last email, they function as these sophisticated mechanisms to demonstrate superior cognitive reliability while you subtly devalue the perceived competence of your rivals to gain favor within the group.
Helpful re-explanation. That is such a specific and recognizable behavior. I think my blood pressure went up just hearing myself read that story.
It's absolutely brutal, because what can Chloe do in that situation if she says, "No, I explained it perfectly fine"? She looks defensive. She looks uncooperative. She looks like she's not a team player.
And that is exactly why it works. Sarah is weaponizing something the research calls cognitive reliability.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that term up. In an evolutionary context, being the person the tribe can trust for accurate information is a huge status booster. It's a massive advantage.
How so?
Well, think about it in simple terms. If we're a tribe lost in the woods and I'm the one who knows the way home, I instantly become the leader. Information is a resource, just like food or water. By stepping in to clarify, Sarah is signaling to the entire group, I am the one with the high-fidelity understanding here. I am the reliable source. Follow me.
And by extension, she is implying that Chloe's the unreliable source, the one who gets you lost in the woods.
It's a zero-sum game in that moment. If Sarah becomes the clarifier, Chloe is instantly demoted to the confused one who needs help. This connects directly to the research on intersexual competition, and specifically how it often manifests among females.
Now, we need to be careful with this, but the research is quite specific, isn't it? It talks about how competition manifests differently depending on gender strategies. It's not saying all women or all men behave a certain way, but that there are observable patterns.
We're talking about statistical patterns in observed behavior, not universal rules. The literature suggests that while males often resort to more overt aggression or direct contests of physical strength, think of the loudest voice in the room dynamic.
The chest beating.
The chest beating, exactly. Female competition, both historically and biologically, has often favored more subtle, indirect forms of aggression. The sources mention a term, competitor derogation.
Okay, break that down for me. Competitor derogation.
It's a fancy way of saying making your rival look bad. The research outlines two main strategies for gaining status. The first is self-promotion, that's just saying I am great. The second is competitor derogation, which is saying she is not great.
And Sarah managed to do both at the exact same time.
That's the brilliance of the move. She promoted her own cognitive reliability, I can explain this better, while subtly derogating Chloe's communication skills. She was confusing.
And she did it all while smiling. The delivery is everything.
The smile is the camouflage. The research indicates that women may prefer these indirect forms, like social manipulation or shunning, because, again, the cost of direct physical aggression is simply too high. From an evolutionary standpoint, physical injury is incredibly costly for reproductive fitness and survival. So the aggression went verbal, it went social, it became strategic.
It's the compliment grenade we saw in the notes, or what one source called compliment by demolition.
Compliment by demolition is the perfect phrase for it. You wrap the attack in the social signaling of support. Sarah looks like a team player to the CEO in the room. She's helping the stakeholders understand. But the payload inside that help is designed to completely destroy Chloe's standing and credibility.
It's fascinating you mentioned the compliment grenade because we have a massive study from Harvard Business School in our stack that looked at this exact thing, the backhanded compliment. And what they found is really surprising. It suggests that Sarah might not be as slick as she thinks she is.
Oh, this is one of my favorite studies in the entire stack because it exposes what the researchers call the flatterer's error. We all think we can get away with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
We think we're being subtle and clever, but the data says otherwise.
So let's really unpack the Harvard study. They define a backhanded compliment as a self-presentation strategy with two simultaneous goals.
Right. It's a dual-purpose weapon. Goal number one is to elicit liking. You want the person to like you, so you offer them a piece of praise. Your speech was good. That's the hook.
The sugarcoating.
The sugarcoating. Goal number two is to convey status. You want to show that you are superior or that you have higher standards or that you're the gatekeeper of quality. So you add the qualifier for a woman or for an intern.
You're articulate for an intern. That's the absolute classic one. Or you handle stress really well for someone who's so sensitive.
The HBS researchers call this drawing a comparison with a negative standard. You aren't comparing them to the top of their field, you're comparing them to the top of a group you implicitly consider inferior. You are putting them in a very specific and not very flattering box.
So the million-dollar question from the study, does it work? Does Sarah actually get the status and the liking she's after?
No, and that is the flatterer's error. The researchers found that people who give backhanded compliments believe they are hitting a home run. They think to themselves, I'm being nice, so they'll like me, but I'm also showing I'm the one in charge, so they'll respect me.
They think they're getting the best of both worlds.
They do, but when they tested this with recipients and, crucially, with third-party evaluators like the CEO watching Sarah and Chloe, the results were disastrous for the person giving the backhanded compliment.
Really? So the CEO in the room probably sees right through Sarah's move.
This study strongly suggests they do. Observers perceive the giver as strategic and overly concerned with their image. It completely kills the liking component. You aren't seen as nice, you're seen as manipulative. You're seen as a jerk.
Okay, so she loses on the liking front. Did she at least gain the status? Does she look more competent?
No, she doesn't even gain the status, because true status, as we'll discuss later when we get to prestige, is often conferred freely by the group. It's not seized by putting others down. People don't respect the person who needs to stand on someone else's shoulders just to look a little bit taller.
If it fails to help Sarah, is it harmless? Does it just bounce off Chloe?
Sadly, no, and this is the most insidious part of the whole thing. While it hurts Sarah's reputation in the long run, it succeeds in harming Chloe in the moment. The research showed that recipients of backhanded compliments suffer a significant and measurable drop in motivation and perseverance.
Because you've just been told you're the king of the losers.
That's a blunt way to put it, but it's basically right. The study talks about placing the recipient at the top of a low-quality distribution. If I say, that's a great idea for an intern, I am implying that the entire distribution of ideas from interns is low quality, and you are just the best of a bad bunch.
Wow.
It signals that your ceiling is low. It tells you, don't try too hard because you're only competing in the kiddie pool anyway. It's incredibly demotivating.
That is devastating. So it's a lose-lose strategy. Sarah looks like a jerk, and Chloe feels like trash and might even perform worse later.
Yet it persists. It happens every single day in offices everywhere. Because in the moment, it feels like a safe way to discharge envy or to assert dominance. The giver gets that momentary dopamine hit of feeling superior, even if the long-term social cost is incredibly high.
Speaking of envy, that brings us to the next level of this. Because sometimes it's not about correcting someone's work or re-explaining their logic. Sometimes it is just about punishing them simply for succeeding. I have a story about a guy named Julian that perfectly illustrates this crabs in a bucket mentality.
The lucky you phenomenon. This is one of the most common dynamics you'll see in sales teams or any highly competitive environment.
So here's the story. I heard it from a viewer who works at a major marketing agency in New York. A young associate, Julian, had just landed a massive account through a mix of hard work and admittedly some very lucky networking at a gallery opening.
Okay, so skill and luck combined.
Right. When the news broke, a more senior colleague comes over, pats him on the back and says, "You got the account. Lucky you." It's amazing what can happen when you're in the right place at the right time.
Ouch. The backhanded pat on the back.
On the surface, it sounded like a congratulation, but that lucky you was a calculated strike. It framed Julian's success as a fluke of chance rather than a result of skill. It was effectively enforcing a social norm that juniors shouldn't rise too fast and, protecting the senior colleague's own ego from the sting of envy. Reading about Julian's experience, I felt this need to pause and look at it through a balanced lens. While that kind of comment feels like a backhanded compliment that stings, it's actually a very human, adaptive mechanism for envy management. We use these judgments to punish perceived nonconformity, like someone skipping the line, without the risk of an open argument.
Right.
It's a way to maintain the social status quo. While it feels politically or emotionally sharp, it's really just a shield used by those who feel their own standing is being threatened by the rapid rise of others. It's a reminder that beneath our professional titles, we are all just trying to feel secure in our own skin.
And that's a perfect summary. The use of backhanded compliments and these lucky you judgments serve as an adaptive mechanism for social norm enforcement and for envy management. It allows individuals to punish what they perceive as nonconformity and protect their own social standing without triggering the massive retaliatory risks that come with overt hostility.
Lucky you. It's such a dismissive phrase when you really stop and analyze it.
Right.
It just strips the agency right out of the person's achievement.
It's basically saying, you didn't earn this. The universe just made a mistake in your favor. Don't get used to it. It diminishes the person and their accomplishment in one fell swoop.
It's a really heavy payload for two little words.
And this brings us to the concepts of envy management and social norm enforcement. We have to remember that human beings are, at our core, surprisingly egalitarian. At least we were in small hunter-gatherer tribes. We don't like it when someone gets too big for their britches too fast.
It triggers the tall poppy syndrome. If one flower grows taller than all the rest, you have to cut it down to size.
Exactly that. In many groups, there is an implicit social norm against nonconformity, specifically rising too fast or threatening the established hierarchy. Julian, by landing a massive account as a junior associate, violated the unspoken hierarchy. He skipped the line.
And that makes the senior people nervous.
It makes them terrified. In that moment, the senior colleague feels a direct threat. This goes right back to the zero-sum principle of status that we saw in the Harvard research. If Julian goes up, the senior colleague feels like they implicitly go down, their relative value in the group decreases.
So they have to drag him back down to their level. They have to reframe the narrative to protect their own position.
But here's the catch. They can't just come out and say, I hate that you succeeded because I'm insecure and it makes me look bad.
No, you can't say that out loud.
You can't admit envy. Envy is a shameful emotion in most cultures, so what do? You attribute the success to luck. By framing it as luck, they achieve two critical things. First, they protect their own ego.
I didn't lose because he's better than me. I lost because he got a lucky break.
Exactly. It saves us their self-esteem. And second, they signal to the rest of the group that Julian is not actually a high-status competitor. The message is, don't follow him, don't admire him. He's just a lottery winner. His success isn't repeatable.
It's amazing how efficient it is. And again, it's all about avoiding the fight.
It is incredibly efficient. And once again, it is a form of indirect aggression. It avoids the retaliatory risk of saying, you don't deserve this. but it delivers the punishment all the same. It creates a narrative where Julian is just a beneficiary of chaos, not a skilled leader. It attempts to strip him of the prestige he just earned.
So we've talked about defense with Liam, status signaling with Sarah, and now envy with Julian. But this all seems to hinge on how we view power and leadership in the workplace. The sources mention a dual strategies theory that I think really helps explain the difference between a good leader and the, as per my last email, crowd.
Yes, this is a fundamental concept in evolutionary psychology, and it is absolutely crucial for understanding office dynamics. There are essentially two ways to get to the top of any social hierarchy: dominance and prestige.
Okay, break them down for me. Because I think in the corporate world, we often confuse them.
We confuse them all the time. Dominance is the ancient primate way. It is based on force, threat, and intimidation. It is about taking status. Think of the alpha chimp who beats his chest, scares the others, and hoards the food for himself.
That's the "I'm the boss because I can fire you" kind of energy.
That is the perfect modern translation. In the human workplace, this translates to the boss who creates divisions, who uses divide and conquer tactics, or who withholds resources to keep people dependent and afraid. Dominance is associated with what psychologists call hubristic pride, which is basically arrogance and conceit.
Okay.
And the research shows that when dominant leaders feel threatened, like our senior colleague with Julian's success, they tend to act destructively. They withhold information. They isolate skilled subordinates who might become a threat. They prioritize holding onto their own power over the group's actual success.
They would rather be king of the ashes than a servant in a palace.
That is a great way to put it. Now compare that to the other path: prestige. Prestige is based on skill, knowledge, and generosity. With prestige, status is freely conferred by the group because you are valuable to them. You are the expert hunter who shares the meat, or the engineer who actually takes the time to teach others how the code works.
This is the mentor. This is the person you want to follow, not the person you follow because you're afraid.
Exactly. Prestige is associated with authentic pride, that feeling of self-worth you get from your accomplishments and from helping others.
So here is the contradiction that I see. Sarah, with her re-explanation, and Mark with his clarity, they are trying to look like they have prestige, aren't they?
That is the fascinating contradiction of the modern office. We live in a world that claims to value prestige. We say we want to follow competent, helpful people. We use words like collaboration and servant leadership.
All the buzzwords.
All the buzzwords. But our ancient instincts often drive us toward dominance behaviors when we feel insecure. So the backhanded compliment, the helpful re-explanation, the passive-aggressive email, these are attempts to mimic prestige.
It's a dominance wolf in prestige sheep's clothing.
Exactly. Sarah wants to look helpful and knowledgeable, which is a prestige signal, while actually suppressing a rival, which is a dominance move. Mark wants to look clear and professional and detail-oriented, which are prestige signals, while actually humiliating a colleague to assert his power, which is a dominance move.
So it's a hybrid strategy.
It's a hybrid strategy born out of the fact that we can't just hit each other with rocks in the conference room anymore. We have to fake the generosity. We have to camouflage our dominance plays.
That makes it feel even more sinister somehow. Like, at least the alpha chimp is honest about wanting to hoard all the bananas. You know where you stand with the chimp.
It is more sinister because it manipulates our social coding. We are programmed to trust the helpful person. So when the helpful person is actually sabotaging us, it creates a massive cognitive dissonance. That's why these workplaces feel so toxic. You can't quite put your finger on why you feel bad because everyone is being so polite.
It's the incongruence.
The incongruence between the words, "I'm just helping," and the intent, dominance, is what drives us crazy.
So we've got these strategies, dominance masked as prestige, indirect punishment. But why do we choose one over the other? Why does one person yell and another send a snarky email?
Yeah.
The sources mention something called the effect-danger ratio, which sounds very tactical.
This is a concept from the work of a researcher named Bjorkqvist on aggression. It sounds like a military term, and it effectively is. The theory is that every time you have the urge to strike at someone in the office, your brain runs a rapid, completely unconscious calculation.
An algorithm.
A survival algorithm. And the calculation is this: how can I maximize the effect of my attack, that is, the damage to them, while minimizing the danger That is, the risk of retaliation to me.
Okay, the effect-danger ratio. Give me an example.
Let's look at overt aggression, screaming, throwing a stapler, punching someone in the face. The effect might be very high. You'll definitely get their attention. But the danger is astronomical.
You get fired, you probably get sued, you get ostracized by everyone you know.
The danger side of the equation is completely overloaded. So for most people in a modern society, that option is blocked. It's not a viable strategy.
So we have to move to the covert side of the spectrum.
We have to. Covert aggression, the backhanded compliment, the gossip, the lucky you, has a phenomenal effect-danger ratio. The effect can still be quite high. You can ruin someone's confidence for a day or even damage their reputation over time, but the danger is almost zero.
Because of that plausible deniability we keep coming back to.
I was just complimenting you. I was just trying to clarify the budget. If you accuse them of aggression, you look like the crazy one. You look overly sensitive. Why are you so defensive, Chloe? Sarah was just trying to help the team.
That is the gaslighting aspect again. The victim has no legitimate recourse.
And the audience factor matters here too. Workplaces are communal. If you are overtly aggressive in front of an audience, the group will punish you for disrupting social harmony. But if you're covert, the audience might not even notice the attack. Or worse, they might even side with you, thinking you're the helpful one. You effectively enlist the audience in your aggression without them even knowing it.
We also have to look at the antecedents, the triggers. Why is the office such a hotbed for this? Is it just human nature unleashed? Or are we building environments that make us meaner? The sources list a few key things. Job insecurity, perceived injustice.
Job insecurity is a massive one. The fear of layoffs activates those primal survival circuits. If there are fewer resources to go around, in this case, jobs competition spikes dramatically. It becomes a zero-sum fight for survival, and people will use any tool they can.
And what about perceived injustice?
That's a huge driver of aggression against supervisors specifically. If people feel like they aren't being treated fairly, if promotions are biased, if credit isn't given where it's due, they feel justified in retaliating. But since they can't do it directly, it comes out in these indirect ways.
There's another one in the research that I found really disturbing, and it's paradoxical. It's surveillance.
Ah, yes, the surveillance paradox.
Like monitoring software, keylogging.
Exactly. The research suggests that the more bosses monitor their employees, counting keystrokes, watching their screens, tracking their active time on Slack, the more aggression actually increases.
That seems completely counterintuitive. You'd think if people know they're being watched, they'd behave better.
You would think so. But it creates this pressure cooker of resentment. It sends a powerful signal of distrust from management. It strips away autonomy. And since you can't yell at the software and you can't yell at the boss who installed it, that aggression and stress has to go somewhere. It leaks out sideways towards your colleagues.
It's displacement. It's like kicking the dog because you had a bad day at work.
It's a perfect analogy. It's like squeezing a balloon. The pressure has to escape somewhere. So you end up snapping at your coworker in a meeting or sending that passive-aggressive email because you feel trapped and powerless in your own job.
I want to touch on one last big concept from the evolutionary pile before we wrap up. Costly signaling. You mentioned this earlier. How does this apply to our passive-aggressive office?
Costly signaling theory is, I think, the key to understanding the difference between a real contributor and a faker. In biology, signals of quality must be costly, to be honest. A peacock's tail is the classic example.
Right. The giant, beautiful tail.
It's heavy, it attracts predators, and it requires a huge amount of metabolic energy to grow and maintain. It is costly. Therefore, if a peacock has a giant, magnificent tail and is still alive, he must be strong and genetically fit. It is an honest signal of his quality.
You can't fake a giant tail. You either have the genes and the help for it or you don't.
Now let's apply that to the office. True competence, what we call prestige, is a costly signal. It takes years of hard work to learn to code like Chloe did. It takes immense effort and skill to land a major client like Julian did. It requires real effort, time, and brain power. Helping a junior employee actually learn a new skill is costly. It takes time away from your own work.
So what is passive aggression in this framework? What kind of signal is that?
Passive aggression is a cheap signal. It is an attempt to signal value without paying the cost. Mark trying to look like a leader by correcting a typo or saying, as per my last email, is cheap. He isn't actually solving the project's problems or doing the hard work. He's just pointing out a flaw from the sidelines.
And Sarah's re-explanation.
cheaper than actually doing the original work of developing the algorithm herself. They are mimics. They are trying to get the credit for having high standards or being a leader without doing the costly work that demonstrates real leadership or high standards.
So they are trying to hack the status system. They want the reward of being the alpha or the expert without putting in the costly investment of actually building the team or doing the innovation.
That is a light bulb moment for me. The "as for my last email" person is essentially wearing a fake peacock tail made of Post-it notes.
That is a beautiful image. And deep down, I think the rest of the group knows it. That's why, as that Harvard study showed, the flatterer's error exists.
Yeah.
We might not say it out loud, but our primate brains sense that something is off. We sense the cheapness of the signal.
We can tell the difference.
We know the difference between someone who actually carries the load and someone who just points at the load and complains about how it's being carried. This has been, frankly, a little disturbing, but mostly incredibly enlightening. We started with Mark and his digital smirk in the break room, and we've ended up dissecting the biology of status and human competition.
It changes how you see the office, doesn't it? It's not just paperwork and meetings and deadlines. It is a group of primates navigating a very complex, very high-stakes hierarchy with ancient tools.
The big realization for me is that our polite workplace culture hasn't actually eliminated aggression. We haven't evolved past the need to fight for status. We've just forced that aggression to evolve. It's gone underground, it's become invisible, and in some ways more confusing.
We are still throwing stones. We've just polished them until they look like pearls. And I think realizing that is the first step to not letting it get to you. When you see it as biology, it becomes a little less personal. Mark isn't a villain. He's just a threatened primate making a cheap signal.
And that leads me to the final thought I want to leave everyone with today. It comes from that concept of compliment by demolition that we touched on earlier.
Let's hear it.
We often think of politeness as the absence of aggression. We tell our kids to be polite as if that means be nice. But based on everything we've covered today, it might be more accurate to say that in the modern office, politeness is simply the best camouflage for a surgical strike. The next time someone tells you that you're smart for your age or articulate for an intern, remember, you haven't just received a compliment, you've just survived a very polite grenade.
And knowing that is the first step to being able to diffuse it.
Exactly. Thanks for diving in with us today.